Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second day of our Writing and Churning Retreat. Thank you for participating and thank you for your emails and support with making it happen. It's a short notice retreat and we are very happy that so many brothers and sisters make use of it and dive into churning and writing maybe already. Yesterday we had our first day and we had Sister Wendy from Italy with us. She gave us in the morning a very rich impulse, very rich talk on churning, very general overview, but very practical things. One thing which I liked very much was very simple, how you can connect one aspect, for example, the virtue of patience with just one other concept of eternity, and suddenly you have a whole different meaning and background. So these many different jewels and inspirations of just how to use simple methods to think in a new way. Everyone who has been there knows, those who missed it, it's not a problem. You can find the recording on our YouTube channel, which has been sent around already. In the afternoon, we had a dialogue session and we practiced a little bit in small groups and shared, but also we gave, Stefania and I gave an introduction to how we understand dialogue and why it's so valuable for us. And that introduction is also on YouTube. If you would like to participate today afternoon, then please have a look at the YouTube channel and learn a bit, see a bit what we have done and what it is about. So now I'd like to welcome our dear brother Jim from London, who will be talking about reviving the spiritual mind using analogy, symbology, and story. Maybe, I don't know how many really know Jim. Jim is one of the first students of London, very old in Gyan, over 40 years. I don't know the exact number, but an old friend. And he really is someone I experienced to be fresh all the time. You might know that it's possible to listen to the London Merli on the webcast. And after the Merli, since the Zoom and Corona time, there has been Merli revision and the London class is engaging. And very often we can also hear the inspirational thoughts and you hear also Jim's voice from time to time. So we thought he's a good one to invite to our Churning and Writing Retreat and listen to some of his methods. Jim has a background as a teacher, and I think that comes through in his approach to play with Gyan. He has his background is also to be a management trainer, a practitioner. He's of meditation, of course, and spiritual practice since a long time. He also explored Christian mystics and concepts from that tradition. So I think we are all very excited now to hear from you, Jim. I see you already, your camera, and yeah, I hand over to you. We have about 30 minutes to hear from you. And after that, we have question and answer, and any questions, please put them in the chat. You can also put them on YouTube. We have an eye on the YouTube channel as well. If the Zoom room is full, then you might listen on YouTube. Thank you very much. And I hand over to you, Jim.
Tom, Bill, Daddy, any name you like. Okay, nice to meet everybody. It's a great project, isn't it? It's sharing our insights and sharing our our take on it. It's so everyone is so different, isn't it? And an area that of great interest for me for a long time has been looking at symbols and story as a background, as a basis. Someone's eating their breakfast. Look, they finished. Good. No, still chewing. Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? For so long, the mind has been force-fed and programmed.
Sorry, Dim, you need to unmute yourself. I just muted all participants. So, because we were hearing some sounds, but okay, thanks.
Yeah, okay. We okay? Right, okay. Well, I was just saying that for so long, that the mind has been force-fed and programmed to follow a certain way of thinking and perceiving. This is part of you could call it the ideology and the politics of this particular age. And even now, becoming more controlled, and the mind is made more passive by increasing dominance of media and internet. And so, as a result, there's very little original thinking. It's all done for us, isn't it? People don't think or don't know how to think. And for me, creative thinking is thinking in a different way. It's about breaking free from the old tram lines of restrictive and repressed awareness. And it's the creating of new awareness about situations, ideas, and people. It's seeing with new eyes, with new spiritual awareness. I mean, it's here, I see it in this way. Maybe it's it's my own particular view of things, of how the mind works, that the mind learns mainly, I feel, from associations or analogy. As Aristotle says, it's impossible to think without a mental picture. It's quite an interesting statement, isn't it? It's impossible to think without a mental picture. And the symbol or object or picture gives the mind something to grasp and hold. And the analogy that we would use links it to our awareness. For example, you're trying to explain a troubled mind. And so maybe that you pick up an example of a stormy sea. So we link them together and we can say a stormy sea is like a troubled mind. And the mind can somehow understand that, grasp it or picture it. The visualization of it or the emotionality of it can somehow translate to the mind the concept of a troubled mind using the symbology of the sea. When it's interesting that all the great teachers of the past, Christ, Buddha, Rumi, and so on, used analogy, symbols and story to clarify and support their teachings. And of course, in the great mother of all knowledge and teachings, the Murli, Baba uses these constantly, isn't it? It's full of them, although heavily Indian culturally based. My own journey of experience of creative awareness has been through 3 stages. The first stage really was about looking back on it in that particular way, is that it's freeing, the mind became freed through soul consciousness. And it was filled with the very powerful and graphic pictures of knowledge and new ideas. It was just filled with those. There wasn't any kind of perceptive analysis, but just those images filled the mind. The second stage for me of my journey was when I began to experience these truths using analogy and symbology. Like Baba is like the sun. I am like a shining star. That sort of helped me to kind of access spiritual awareness. And the third stage is really about becoming these truths for me, merging and integrating the experience from I am like starlight to I am that light. So it's really about, the first stage is about accepting. The second stage of consciousness is about experiencing. And the third is becoming. This aspect of being it in that particular way. One of my main supports has been, and on my journey, has been through churning. I think for all of us, doesn't it? Churning plays a major part. And I really enjoyed playing with the metaphors and symbols of them early. And it just kept me full of newness and freshness. I think for me, I would have died a death, I think, just listening to the kind of interpretations of Eastern symbology. But the other symbols opened me up to kind of insightful ways for my own particular experiences. For example, recently in a Merli, Baba was talking about, he said, your journey is a little bit like a boxing match. And this got me thinking, like it's a game. Maya, the illusionist, is trying to make me unconscious, trying to knock me down. And, I was just thinking about all the analogies of boxing, hitting me, say, for example, in the solar plexus, which is like old sanskars, or hitting me on the chin, which is, again, it's like the impact of ego, or hitting me in the head, which is like doubts that come. And so it kind of like, so the aim of our journey is to avoid, to keep moving, to be light, to stop ourselves being constantly knocked down, because we are knocked down all the time. But we're allowed to recover, aren't we? Through knowledge and yoga. This refreshes us, gives us momentum to carry on. And eventually, at the end of the boxing match, we win on points. I think the judges, in our favor, we win on the points. So it's really about using knowledge to entertain us, yet at the same time teach us. So we're teaching ourselves through this this innate intuitive wisdom that we have. So I'd like to share some teachings and ways that you might find interesting that will help your creative thinking and writing. So I'm going to switch on to my slide if I can do it. Here we go. Right. And I'm going to try and open it up. There we are. Here we go. Right. Okay. This is a picture of myself when I was, or maybe, no, I think it's a picture of young Daddy Yankee, maybe, I'm not sure. The symbol, for me, is a doorway that the mind uses to reach certain levels of awareness. We can travel with it. And from my experience, the opening to our inner wisdom is completely related, I think, to our levels of subtlety and purity. And as we gradually throw off the old influences and effects, our clarity enables us to go deeper and unravel deeper aspects of what we already believe we know, isn't it? The same thing becomes something else. I mean, the symbol of the lotus is a very wonderful representation of how the mind reveals itself to itself. So spirituality is really about seeing with new eyes. It's opening our eyes of the intellect, and we're able to see and perceive on a different level. We're seeing with this new vision. So we have this kind of picture of an orange, or is it an orange? With spiritual awareness, we can view this as a teaching tool, to help us understand deeper aspects of metaphysical awareness. For example, like the outside of the orange is bitter, tasteless, there's no goodness. Yet inside, it's sweet, it's juicy, it's full of vitamins. And so it's a symbol that helps us, that teaches us, it makes us aware that if we let go of the outer world, the periphery world, but we go inside. And when we go inside, we discover what we've been looking for, beauty, sweetness, and so on. So you can see it's a very simple analogy that can help us understand what metaphysics is, what meditation is. As one simple analogy can be very helpful in that particular way. So maybe let's look at, we can use other symbols of awareness, like for example, to help us interpret more about ourselves. For example, using this example of a tree. And in a way, it's like looking at the tree with spiritual vision. We can see that, look at the qualities of the tree. And we can see some of them I wrote down. The tree's got qualities of acceptance, generosity, isn't it? Stability, flexibility, benevolence, openness. Sounds like a better Brahman than myself, actually. But what's it teaching me? It's telling me, it's in telling my higher self, it said, you can be the same as me. And applying its qualities, if I apply them, if I adapt them, I can become happier, kinder, less critical, more content in that particular way. To help us kind of grasp this symbol and its teaching, I think it's very useful to then hold it in our awareness through maybe creating an affirmation. I'm a great believer in affirmations. I use affirmations a lot. Simply, one, because they're very essential. They're not long-winded, and they're very easy for the mind to hold and to understand and accept. Like, for example, here, So we create the affirmation of I am. The I am affirmation is very powerful because it talks directly to the subconscious. We're kind of convincing ourselves. The subconscious has kind of views of what you are. I'm no good. You're this, you're German, you're English, you're tall, you're thin, And so we have this kind of category of kind of beliefs. And so we've got to try and transform the belief patterns in our awareness. And so we can do this by spiritual affirmations. We're affirming it to ourselves. So we can say, I am like a tree with qualities of kindness and acceptance. My life now becomes one of peace and contentment. And I'm now able to have improved and happy relationships. So we're giving ourselves an awareness of who we are, a qualitative state. And we're telling us that, yeah, through that, by applying these qualities, my inner self improves and my relationships improve. So we can see it's beneficial. And it's quite interesting also that one of the big kind of main things we have to contend with is of course our ego. And when we hear people telling us things, when we hear classes, when we hear advice, the ego will immediately stand up and kind of somehow will be very dubious about it or reject it. But when we use natural symbols of the natural world, the ego finds it a lot easier to accept it. The tree is telling me, oh, that's okay. It's not a rival. And it's quite interesting that all the great teachers of the past used natural symbols, natural images to emphasize and to clarify the teaching or the innate wisdom that they were trying to use. Maybe let's move on. Look out using, again, we've got to remember good old God. And again, using the sun as a symbol. Sun is a huge symbol, isn't it? I'm using very simple analogies just to emphasize my point. I mean, think about the qualities of the sun. Illuminating, regenerative, transformative energy, and so on. And then we can apply them through affirmation. Again, the affirmation, telling us, confirming, kind of illuminating our inner mind. So we can create an affirmation. God, I can put down the unlimited healing light. You can put whatever you like that fits your needs at this particular time. So God, the unlimited healing light finishes. So what do I want to finish? So maybe my fears. Could be car rage or something, but finishes my fears. Fills me. What does I want God to fill me with? I want more understanding and hope. And what is it I want to give me? Or what I want more in my life? I want to love more and share. So giving me the capacity to love and share. And then what do I want to feel? I want to feel capable and content. So the affirmation kind of captures my kind of creative thinking. We think, but what we do is it dissipates. It's lost in the kind of miasma of thinking of the world. But when we catch it, we hold it through affirmation, then we can revisit it and repeat it. So we use it. God, the unlimited healing light, finishes my fears, fills me with understanding. We experience it, understanding and hope. Give me the capacity to love and share. Enable me to feel capable and content. And I stay in this light. Very simple meditation, isn't it? Simple affirmation. But it's doing it all within a few lines. And it's going deep into the subconscious. It's going deep into our kind of receptive mind, our spiritual heart. Is it allowing it? It's beneficial. There's no way to reject it. And you can hold it. And you can stay with each line. Each line can be a mantra for yourself. The affirmation is a mantra. It's a guide. God finishes my fears. Just take that line. God finishes my fears. And you can keep the image. Keep the image of the sun. Very difficult sometimes to kind of encapsulate or to represent God, isn't it? So just keep this image of this sun, this beautiful sun, benevolent sun, giving us that power. And so what we can do is we can extend this and we can use it in different ways. So I thought would be interesting for you guys, maybe for homework, for your work this afternoon, is to make a list of just you developing this habit of creating and seeing in different ways. I'm like you can use anything. I'm like a spoon thing around your house with qualities of blending and mixing. It doesn't matter what you use, but it's what we're doing is we're discovering more about ourselves and we're transforming matter. It's no longer the thing it was or is, but now it's something else. And so we can do a list of things that you can use and create. I'm like a house, right? With, say, openness and benevolence, whatever quality comes to your mind. It's a very nice exercise that you can use. Go out with a notepad or look out from your window and use it in that particular way. Is that okay? And I've got another extent. You're not getting away with it easy here. There's another little exercise here. Then you can extend it. The same thing, but maybe more focused and more related to your needs. Like, for example, I'm like like a house with qualities of openness and warmth. But now you're applying it to your life. So it's a teaching tool. It's something that helps you look at yourself and your interaction and looking at the benefits and effects. My life becomes one now of, what does your life become? One of generosity, one of acceptance, and now I'm able to interrelate with others in a better way. This might be an issue for yourself and so on. So we're finding ways to enhance our self-esteem, yet at the same time giving us methodology to help us in our interactive life. Very simple, isn't it? Very, very simple. We don't need streams of consciousness sitting there for 6 hours listening to someone telling us about the value of creative grace and love. And you go, that sounded really good, but I can't remember a damn thing about it. Doesn't it? We can't remember. I don't know what they said. It was good though. I enjoy it. Now, you've got to go out and face the world. But what you do is you're creating these little kind of tools to help you deal with things, to help teach yourself. Another area I'd like to look at, maybe move on. I'd like to look at more about the symbology of archetypes and models. And especially one of my favorites is fairy stories. Now, we all know we all love fairy stories, isn't it? You know, some of you probably won't admit it. You probably read them now even. You go back to your favorite fairy story. Now, fairy tales play a major part in our learning journey. They contain a huge galaxy of characters, objects, symbols, roses, demons, witches, fairies, princess, you know, isn't it? Enchanted forests, as you can see there. And they're interesting, aren't they? When you think about how the psychological kind of content of fairy tales work. And this is why children love them. Children, not only because of the characters and the kind of the scenarios and the goodness, but they're telling us about what we should do. They're telling us, don't be greedy, aren't they? Don't be nasty. Never give up, isn't it? Fairy tales, never give up. That goodness always conquers evil. Love always wins the day in a fairy story, isn't it? And of course, the favorite line of all fairy stories, they lived happily ever after. We all love the ending. It's a kind of reconciliation. It's a kind of a line that we love to hit. That everything will be fine in the end, isn't it? And goodness will conquer all. And the classic fairy story tale is a picture frame, I think, that allows us to glimpse into the world of universal truths. Many of the stories have their origins in ancient Indian teachings, but were changed and adapted by later cultures. Such stories were used and are still used by wisdom teachers to teach a particular way of life or virtue or quality. But through time, now only the story remains and its deeper aspects lost to unawareness. But now through the vehicle of the spiritual intellect, we can recover many of the deeper aspects and meanings and teachings that we can see. For example, there are many, aren't there? Many kind of tales like these, you know, that are all familiar. I think so. I think they're kind of universal. You know, there's so many. King Midas, isn't it? About greed, Emperor's New Clothing, about vanity, or Cinderella, about goodness, Pied Piper, about following Rapunzel, about her hair, Red White, all about purity, and the Little Mermaid, and so on. You know, all of them, all they're familiar. There's so many, aren't there? There's so many tales that we're familiar, that we know of, but you can use, but not to dismiss them, because they're a part of our kind, I feel, our spiritual heritage in that way. And they take us into self-awareness. They take us into self-discovery and help us understand the dangers and challenges of our journey. It's preparing us, of the dangers, like the wicked witch, go into the wood, be careful of deceit and deception. And it gives techniques about the power of goodness and virtue. So all these stories are about ourselves. Now, I'd like to look at maybe one particular story, okay? Maybe you might say, well, how does it work? How can we work with it? One particular one, this one is probably very common, isn't it? Very universal, isn't it? Hansel and Gretel, isn't it? I think it's the story of Daddy Jenky and Sister Jenty. Oh, no, maybe not. Isn't it? It's kind of the archetypal kind of situation. Their mother and father abandons them, isn't it? They're abandoned. So it's like the symbol of we've left our original nature and religion. We've lost it. And they become lost in the wood, a symbol of illusion. They're given some help, some breadcrumbs, isn't it? They were given breadcrumbs. But it's like limited help and support of this particular time. Often we would say bhakti, it's very limited. But these were eaten, the breadcrumbs, weren't they? They were eaten by the birds, which is like materialism and consumerism. And they were attracted, as you can see, by the gingerbread house. And again, a symbol, of the glamour and attraction of the physical world and the senses. And of course, there's the wicked witch, which is again a symbol of wrong consciousness, materialism, that wants to eat them, wants to kill their consciousness, and so on. And of course, what happens, that the wicked witch is killed. She's shoved into the oven, horrific. But again, a symbol of how love overcomes negativity. symbol of love, kills evil. But again, the kind of the resolution of the story, isn't it? They discover that the gingerbread house is in fact a house of jewels. And it's like a symbol that if you look deeper, beyond the initial effects, that you will find real truth, real value, real beauty, the things you've been looking for is within. So in that way. So a little bit of homework here to follow up. Maybe that, and there are sheets, the guys there, all the controllers there. I've got some of these sheets as well, but maybe that you could choose one of these stories, go back if you'd like, one of these or stories that you know, and maybe that you could have a kind of approach to it, like I call it deciphering the tale. You know, say, what's the moral of the story? What's it really about? What are the main characters? What do they represent? You kind of dig into it. What powers or qualities do they show? How does right and goodness reassert itself? What issues can this tale help resolve? And how does the tale help me with my own journey? This is really important, isn't it? What's it talking to me? How's it helping me at this moment? What's it kind of calling out to? Is there something in the story that's kind of resonating with aspects of my life at this particular time? And it's fun. It's a really interesting, and they're really short. You can get these tales on the internet, can't you? You can really, if you're not saying, I don't know where to buy them, we can't buy, I'm ashamed to go and ask for a fairy story. No, go to the library or go online, and they're very short. But it's kind of an interesting exercise that you can do. I hope that's okay, guys. Maybe I'd just like to look at maybe about symbols. Okay. Now, it's interesting that symbols by themselves, just, you know, the things by themselves provide and create a very powerful and evocative effect on our consciousness. They represent concepts that we cannot quite define or fully comprehend. The symbol is a picture that bridges the outer and inner worlds. It's a link to a distant, forgotten truth. And I got a few, you know, things like these, you know, like Easter Island heads. People kind of like go, oh, look at that. Wow. But they don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what it is. But there's something about it. Look at candles, symbols of, you know, you could get eternity, God, the rose, isn't it? Very common in so many things, isn't it? Inner beauty, nobility, truth, and so many other kinds of symbols, isn't it? Holy Grail, the Ankh, the Eye of Horus, the caduceus, symbalances, and so on. Well, you know, representing many things, but the real meaning is lost. But what we're left with is the symbol, and so on. Mountaintops, always a major kind of evocative symbol, isn't it? Castles, Natraj, and the Sphinx, isn't it? All these are symbols of inner wisdom, inner powers, understanding, and so on. You know, all of these are remnants, memories of old and internal teachings. And they become special, aren't they? They're given a special focus, an exalted position, and adhered to and added to by reference and speculative analysis. You know, oh, it must be this. And so they build up this kind of wonderful kind of false facade of what it really is. And in our minds, they seem to have some special position or quality or power. But through application and direction of spiritual intellect, we can unravel their meaning and qualities. It's quite easy to understand it. But what I'd like to look at really is maybe things that are more within our own grasp, you know, that we can do the same for the things around us. Okay, that we're familiar with, and we can see and use them as a focus to open our intuitive knowing. Like this chair. Is it a chair? Is this a great teacher? Is this chair more spiritual than you? Let's have a look. So look at the qualities of a chair. It's open, it's accepting, it's supporting, it's very welcoming, it's balanced, comfortable, and goes on, isn't it? Have you that many qualities as a chair? But we can use it. And then we can again go back to our affirmation. We can go back to our holding of it and applying it to our own kind of self and our world. For example, I am, again, I am. This is really a very powerful form of entry into acceptance, into knowing, into awareness. I am like a chair with qualities of stability and acceptance. And again, my life becomes one then of easiness and non-violence. Very simple. So you're enhancing your self-awareness, but giving yourself an awareness that what you can be and how it can affect your life very easily, isn't it? Very simple, using this analogy, using these things. So I hope that's what I'd like you to do. Homework again, guys. Here we go. I would like you to maybe choose something this afternoon in your home, okay, or outside, anywhere. Okay, then list its qualities. All right, write down what thing it offers. Then apply them to yourself using an affirmation like we've done below. Okay, so very simple, isn't it? I'm like, with qualities of, my life becomes one of, with others, I am now able to. This is it's interesting that you guys are teachers, very useful tool to help students understand and experience something very quickly. Very difficult, isn't it? Meditation is such a difficult thing, but like Aristotle said, do you remember what he said at the beginning? Come on, that you can't think without a mental picture. And so the chair, say we're using the chair again, we go back to our old chair, helps us understand what the qualities are and how they will work for you and how they will work with you, okay, in that way. So it's okay. Is that right? Easy homework, that one, and enjoy it. Just like to maybe finish off a few minutes. Have I got a few more minutes, guys? A couple of minutes?
Sure, yes.
Just one area that I'd like to look at, which I think is very important, is the whole concept of the epic journey, the great hero. And all our cultures, these play a major part in our kind of experiential life. They create inspiration, don't they? Wonder, and a trigger for higher awareness. These are the tales of the great heroes and their epic adventures. I've got a few here. Odysseus, tales of Odysseus. Hercules, there he is, just about suitable for Brahmin audience. Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And we got the Holy Grail, which is an additional kind of aspect. The Journey of the Magi, the Three Wise Men. These are all epic journeys, all symbolical journeys, I think. None of them existed, I don't think. Again, a present-day classic, a present-day epic, isn't it? Frodo and Lord of the Rings. Incredible, so much stuff within these stories that resonate, that connect with the old tales as well. Dionysius journeying to the underworld to look for Demeter, a great classic. And of course, Sister Janty again. Oh no, not Sister. Dorothy, that's right, I couldn't, not clear there. Dorothy and the search for the yellow brick road. Again, a very great journey, interesting enough, isn't it? If you don't know, explore them, have a look and find them and so on. And of course, our great heroes today, today, all of us look forward to, all of us want to be Batman, Superman, and so on. But all of these are very heavily symbolic, all the tales, with lots of subplots and sub-stories, espousing values of courage and virtue, and the search for truth and goodness, all of them. The epic is primarily an analogy, I feel anyway, of the soul's personal journey, facing the challenges and issues of the spiritual path. I mean, a lovely kind of an additional exercise is maybe to choose an epic tale and churn its details, events, the scenes that happen and the happenings, and the role of the hero, how the hero deals with the issues and what he overcomes. However, what I'd like to do is, for our own personal work, is not so much focus on that. I thought it would be more interesting and relevant to look at the dangers and challenges we have to face for ourselves and the ways we can deal with them, using an analogy of our spiritual journey as a boat traveling the seas of the world. So, for example, I think it's quite simple in a way that, we have sharks. If you're traveling, and this is an analogy of the boat of the life. So these are some of the dangers. You could probably add a lot more of them, but say sharks. Who are the sharks that we have to face and deal with? Who are the pirates? Pirates steal, take your time, your energy, delay you, kidnap you. Wrecks. What are the storms that come? The inner storms, the outer storms. So many, isn't it? Very interesting to kind of go into the refinement of the challenges. What are the rocks? What doldrums are the calms, and so on, with Miss Whirlpools. What do they represent? And then their influence and effect. What's the effect on me generally? What's the effect on others? And then solutions. What's the solution? How do you deal with a shark? Swim fast. Pray. Or pirates. How do you deal with pirates? People, that it's interesting because this is not fantasy, is it? These are things these are things we're facing all the time. All of these things, isn't it? The storms, these are all the time we're facing. Storms come all the time out of nowhere. There's the physical storms, death, bereavement, loss, so on. Loss. And then there's the inner storms that's happened to the mind. How do you deal with them? So it's that's a kind of challenge, I think, an interesting bit of homework to do. So I'll stop there and I'll leave it to you guys.
Can you maybe stop sharing your screen?
Right, okay.
Yes. Wow, this was amazing. It feels like really being in Baba's school, like a child.
Sit still, don't talk. Oh, sorry. All right.
No, I was just, I just feel like so happy to get all those methods. And I think for some of us, like for myself, for example, I tend to be a bit serious, but this takes it to a completely different level of just having fun with it as well. And also, like you're saying, how those symbols speak to the subconscious. So it's like, it's both fun and games, but it's also really going deep through those symbols and analogy. So yeah, it's wonderful. I hope you can send us the whole, people are asking in the chat for the whole, like all the worksheets. I think we are all eager to go and do our homework. After your session, you sent us some, but we can add the rest also.
I sent them all.
You sent them all?
You have them all.
Okay. Yes, I think I liked also how, how you spoke about the affirmations, choosing the symbol, going through the questions that you sent us, and then using the writing. I think for myself, I've often sat down and wanted to write something, and it kind of doesn't go anywhere much, but you just put it so clearly, like to use the symbols and to use the writing to create like a little meditation for ourselves. So very, very practical and useful things that you have spoken about. And I think now there will be time for Q&A. So please add any questions that you may have for Jim in the chat. Many new things have been shared. And I don't know, for me, like Baba says, that student life is the best. And this session really, brings that awareness of being a student. And I just love getting all of those worksheets and getting such clear instructions, really getting something to work with and, to make it practical. So Caroline, would you like to join us and for the Q&A? And all the rest, please, any questions that you may have about what Jim shared or about anything else related to churning and writing, please feel free to put your questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Stefania, for the summary and your thoughts. And thank you, Jim, for giving us so much rich inspiration. And the questions slowly come in. And I think your presentation was so clear that there might not be that much questions.
Okay, bye. Should we go now?
It's more, right. No, stay. It's more that, and it's, I think, a perfect result of sharing or teaching something is when those who are listening just can't wait to go back to their desk or their work and start doing it, applying it. That's the greatest outcome, I guess. Listening to you, I became more aware that there are different purposes of churning, very different ones. And I wonder if you consciously choose according to a need, maybe, which you become aware of in yourself, you consciously choose a particular purpose and particular method. What I heard was, for example, the whole aspect of exercise, like training yourself to think and work with something, but then also very much churning with the purpose of integrating Gyan into my life, like sanskara stories, like bad people, bad guys in a fairy tale, who incorporating sanskaras, which I maybe have to face with my friends, but also churning as a way to get myself into an experience of the more subtle vibration of certain concepts. And you also mentioned the purpose of creating self-awareness. So there were probably more, but these were some of the purposes and means I heard. And yeah, the question, like, is it that you like also churning as a form of, or Gyan as a form of a medicine, where you see a need, like some nutrition is missing in the body and there is something missing in the soul, maybe just exercise, maybe inspiration, maybe an application. Is that something for you which you consciously reflect in yourself and then choose, or this type of churning would be helpful for me now? I hope it's not a too complicated question here, but it's just something I was curious.
I can't remember what you were saying initially. Yeah, for me, it's organic. You know, the whole thing is that not to worry too much, not to kind of make it kind of a process. You know, this is not a kind of physical school. That when you look at the educational kind of models today, is about force feeding, applying things that are probably not necessary, probably not adapted to the needs at this particular moment. So children are learning things about angles and equations that haven't got the faintest idea or how to use it or even useful for them. And so in a way, I think for me, that when I say, for example, when I'm listening to the Merli, I kind of listen to it and just something comes from it. I don't really think that I need something. I need everything. We need everything. But particular needs, I think I met. If you go, for me anyway, that if you go with an open consciousness or an open kind of mind, that something will stand out, something will speak to you. And I write it down, I kind of mind map it. And I'll kind of, maybe even at the time listening to it, I can churn it, I can kind of open it up. It'll open up to me quickly. Or maybe afterwards, I will kind of think about it and use it and think there's something interesting. Because I think what's happening is that our kind of higher self is also working with us at the same time, that it's actually kind of telling us, maybe intuitively, subconsciously, these are areas that needs to be filled or needs to be answered. And so if we go with an open consciousness, the Merli is a very, very wide and open kind of menu. And lots of things that Baba says, I mean, when I look back, things that I looked at and heard in, say, years ago, now I'm paying attention to. I let it go. Just, God, that wasn't important. Or even rejected my kind of egoistic kind of consciousness. I don't need that. That's Indian. That's Eastern. But now I'm beginning, because maybe my level of of course, not maybe, but my purity and my subtlety is enabling me now to see a wider spectrum of the truth, because I think the Merli is such a universal document that everything has a vast array of depth in it, every line. But sometimes we haven't the ability or the conscious or the kind of the insight to kind of go into it. We can. I think if we give ourselves time, it will open up. But they open up. You know, I mentioned like the lotus flower is a symbol of kind of awakening, isn't it? The 1,000-petal lotus, it opens and it opens and it opens and it opens. So you could look at one thing every day and you'll see a different aspect of that. Be pretty boring, I should think, but you get the idea of it, that your mind will begin to perceive connections and associations that you never saw before. You know, you're becoming more unlimited in your perceptions. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I like very much that it's an intuitive process also, that you don't like intellectually, as you said, need to identify the need maybe and trust that. Yeah, there are questions. One question from the participants. How do you try to see a quality when you cannot see them, cannot see any quality? Or in something?
Well, you see what you see. And again, it's like it's a kind of an awakening of your kind of intuitive mind. You know, that what I could see 10 years ago, now I can see more deeper and more kind of wider aspects of that. So I think you've got to have patience with it. You're always going to see some qualities and some goodness in it. And maybe just to kind of, what can happen is that sometimes our mind is still full of other stuff, which is blocking our clarity. And so sometimes be patient. So I'm looking at, I've got a clock here. So I'm looking at the clock and I can only see some quality, but maybe if I come back to it, you've got to be patient. This is the effort you have to make, I think. Baba said, it is a path of effort. It just doesn't happen. You really have to work, you know, on this particular path. You have to make, the mind has been subjected to lots of crap. We've been force-fed, full of so much kind of illusions and so many different ways, wrong thinking. So we have to kind of break free and see now with a different vision. And so we kind of go back to it, look at it again, and maybe new things will happen. What's this? What is it? What does it connect to? And then travel with, let those associations work with it. You know, your mind might jump off somewhere. Go with it. Don't worry. Time, it might take you into aspects of time or cycle or the past, or doesn't matter, but still keep it kind of orientated around the clock in that particular way. So just be patient. I think patience is a really major factor, I think, as we kind of travel on this particular path. Be patient, you'll get there. You know, that you have everything, but you just have to have that faith and that courage to kind of just keep applying what Baba's telling us.
Thank you. I'm just trying to read out what has come in the chat. One person says, she has a logic child at school, and so much literature is being delivered there, educated there, and that seems to inspire her to look at and go through that with a spiritual lens of poems and short stories. It's good if other people have children in school. That might be a beautiful way to connect and talk with children about spiritual perspectives as well.
But talk about yourself. I mean, why, you know, like, why not revisit, even if you haven't got children, revisit these tales, look at them, and use it to teach yourself. They're very, very simple. What you don't need to look at huge, big volumes of kind of erudite learning, you know, thousands of pages of stuff. Yeah, stories are very essential, aren't they? They're very essential. They're very succinct, to the point. They're not. They don't beat about the bush. They just tell you directly, and you can see. But you can learn. You can teach yourself. You know, you can open yourself. You can apply knowledge to it. Apply your understanding to it. Even ask others. Involve others. Have a learning circle. Today we're going to sit and discuss Snow White or the Little Mermaid, and so.
Another question, someone asked, do you look at the symbols of your own dreams? And if you think that's important for BKs to do so?
Yeah, good question, that, isn't it? That's a very good question. I think yes and no, I think, isn't it? It's one of those things that sometimes, you know, you could have eaten the wrong food and you have a kind of reaction. Dreams are very interesting, isn't it? What's triggering the dream? What's affecting the dream? Sometimes it is some aspect of kind of repressed awareness that's trying to break free, but sometimes we only get a fragment of that awareness, and sometimes it can be frightening, or it can be confusing, and so sometimes it's very difficult to kind of comment on people's dreams, because each one has a different take and it manifests in a different way. But I think pay attention to them and maybe think about them, but don't worry about them. I think, you know, sometimes it can be a very clear picture. Something can come very clear. Then think about it, but don't let it kind of worry. Dreams are from your past. So it's something from the past. So it's gone. It's something, maybe something to saying to goodbye, or a regret, or a resentment, or something. But just keep it there and just say, well, okay, you know, but don't worry about it. It's a tricky one. It's a good question, actually, to look
at. Can you give an example of today's Merli, what you like to churn about, or how to use today's Merli to churn? And another question, I just put them both. Do you when you work with affirmations, do you take them for a longer time, or how long do you work with one affirmation to deepen it?
Well, I can't remember some of the things in the Merli. I was looking at reading the Merli today, actually, hearing it, and there was a few things in it. Sometimes there isn't there? Sometimes the Merli can be just explaining kind of how things are. You know, Baba's talking about the historicity of the yagya and things like this, and how things, and they did this and all the rest of it. And you have to kind of work hard and pull out some things from it, and look how you can kind of, how does that apply to me? Or maybe it might be just be the blessing, you know, the blessing. I think the blessing was about, can you remind me what the blessing, I've forgotten what it is. I got it, it's just gone now. But affirmations are very useful, because I think use them for as long as you wish, or as long as you want. Sometimes what happens is the effect of them stays with you in your consciousness. They're embedded. It's like, it's the experience, like I was saying, that in your affirmation should be about acknowledging I am. You know, I am, say I am light. Is this acknowledgement? It's accepting. It's telling the mind. Then it's experiencing. I experience that light. You feel it. Integrate. You feel. I experience. Hold it. Like feel it. You're bringing it into your being. You're allowing it to explode. about it, just hold it. And so after a while, you won't need to repeat it. It's like you are it. It's there. You know, it's like, I don't need to think about that I'm clever, I'm very nice looking, I'm a very good Brahmin. You know, I know that. I don't need to kind of go over it. But it's like, but there are things that you need to keep working with, because it's not, you haven't really, you know, you haven't integrated it or you haven't understood it. So you need to keep using with it. Isn't it? It's a matter of your own needs and create different affirmations about other things. Look at other things, you know, look at the garden, go into your garden. I'm like a rose, I'm fragrant and light, and I change the atmosphere. See, that one is it's a constancy, isn't it? Just look, just say, don't just sit in the garden, but we use transformational consciousness. The flower is no longer a flower, but it's a tool to remind you of your own beauty. You are the living flower. So everywhere we go, don't just look blandly, or don't just stand as observers of this old world, but change it. We change the world by changing our vision, by changing our attitude, by changing our interaction. We transform it, isn't it? And it's an interesting game. So it's giving us a kind of methodology to deal with it. Otherwise, it'll just trap us. It's knocking on the door, isn't it? It's very powerful. And this is why you have to keep working with our mind, our creative thinking, our creative mind. Change it. As it comes forward, change it. It's a bit like, I think it's Tai Chi, isn't it? As they come difficult, they're under an influence. They lack love. So immediately I move into a state of compassion. My vibrational field opens up, protects me, and changes the situation. Otherwise, we become passive and we become lost, sucked into the whirlpool of confusion. It's another analogy there.
I think, yeah, and the picture of Tai Chi connected to churning is a beautiful picture to, I think, come to a closure of this this session. Yeah, I pictured Tai Chi more in the dance of sanskaras and so on, but using it for churning is a completely different, beautiful idea. Jim, thank you so much. I think we all took a lot of inspiration and are eager now to go to our pen and paper and start journaling and
Yes.
churning.
And make sure you do it properly, and don't slack, and don't make sure you do it neatly and tidy.
Sure.
Right.
Stefania will give us a few announcements for the afternoon, and then we have you leading us into a beautiful meditation. And in the end, when we have stopped, that's what Stefania can explain now. Thank you. I say goodbye for now.
Thanks for your questions.
Yes, thank you. And we will again have a special chance in the afternoon for the small groups. And as Caroline mentioned, we explained quite a bit yesterday, and it was put on YouTube, because our wish for the small groups was really to create a special atmosphere and to cultivate our skills of listening and sharing. I think for some of us, I can at least speak for myself, sometimes I enjoy small groups like this, and sometimes I feel it doesn't take you anywhere, kind of, and it stays a bit superficial, and I don't get much out of it. But I think with Brahmins, it's such a potential when we come together for really rich sharings and also for deep listening. So for the afternoon session, it's really about practicing. I mean, this is like a school, both the morning and the afternoon. So in the afternoon, we Baba students, we will meet and we will practice our skills of listening and sharing in a new way. So if you didn't attend the session yesterday, the small groups, I would encourage you to listen to the YouTube introduction, just so that you are familiar with the guidelines we are using. And tomorrow we have Sister Aruna from Kuwait in the morning session. The title is Be Inspired. So these days are a lot about being inspired, actually. And yeah, thank you again to Jim. I think we all feel so happy and lots of newness. I understand now, Caroline was telling me, because I don't know you so much personally, but Caroline knows you a bit better. And she was saying that she always feels that you're so intoxicated with the knowledge. Like always, yeah, like the gopes and gopis that Baba speaks about. And now I understand why. So thank you so much. And if you would guide us into a few minutes of meditation, that would be great. And after we have stopped the recording in the end, we can all put on our cameras and gallery views and just see each other. That would also be nice. But first, a few minutes of meditation. Om Shanti.
I thought I'd talk a little bit, meditate about one of the analogy, and I'd like to do a little reading from Ram Dass and then finish with a meditation on the same theme. And this is a very beautiful kind of insight that Ram Dass from America said. When you go into the woods and you look at trees, you see all of these different trees. And some of them are bent and some of them are straight. And some of them are evergreen and some of them are whatever. And you look at the tree and you allow it. You see why it is that way. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light. And so it turned that way. And you don't get all emotional about it. You just allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all of that. And you're constantly saying, you're to this. Or I'm to this. That judging mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating just the way they are. So a little meditation now about trees. I am like a tree. I stand above the things around, not affected or influenced by the world around. I am firmly rooted in my spiritual self and natural nature, and in my love for others and love for God. And like a tree, I now stand unshakable, immovable. And though nothing now can move me, yet I bow and bend to the needs of others. And through the winds of disturbance and the influence of others may come my way, but now as a detached and compassionate observer, I see all with understanding and with love. And like a tree, I open the arms of my soul to welcome and embrace my needy world. Like a tree, I'm open and generous, offering support and shelter to those hearts which are hurt, broken, and trapped in sorrow. So like a tree, I am stable and serene, with qualities of acceptance and generosity. And now my life becomes one of kindness and love. Om Shanti.